Hello, everybody. My name's Dave Rollins. I'm the city manager in Fillmore, California. And before we start tonight, I would like to have Erica Herrera, our Human Resources Director. She will introduce our interpreters from Just Communities. They have a few words before we start tonight's program.
Thank you, Mr. Rollins, and good night to the community and constituents who are listening to us tonight. I would like to introduce our interpreter, Simone Rivandeneira, and she has a couple of instructions for whoever needs language interpretation. Simone?
Soy miembro de la Red de Justicia Lingüística en Comunidades Justas. Voy a proveer interpretación entre inglés y español para el taller de esta noche. Un ambiente bilingüe virtual exitoso depende de todos y todas, no solamente de la intérprete. Pueden ayudar teniendo en cuenta algunos puntos. Hablen claramente para asegurar que les podemos escuchar. Hablan a un ritmo moderado. Tengan cuidado de no hablar demasiado rápido, especialmente si están leyendo. Solamente debe hablar una persona a la vez. Hablen en el idioma en el que se sientan más cómodos y cómodas. Pedimos que las personas bilingües no cambien de un idioma a otro debido a las limitaciones de la tecnología con la que estamos trabajando. En un momento, la anfitriona activará la función de interpretación y en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla podrá seleccionar el idioma en el que desea escuchar el taller, en inglés o español. Esto le permitirá escuchar cuando los oradores hablen en ambos idiomas, pero en el idioma de su preferencia. Si estás en el teléfono o en una tableta, necesitas encontrar el menú de 3 puntos y seleccionar Interpretación de idiomas. Hi, my name is Simona Rivadeneira, and I am representing the Just Communities Language Justice Network, and I will be providing interpretation between English and Spanish for today's meeting. A successful virtual bilingual environment depends on all of us, not just the interpreter. You can help by keeping a few things in mind. Speak clearly to ensure we can hear you. Speak at a moderate pace. Please be careful not to speak too fast, especially if you are reading. Only one person should speak at a time. Speak in whichever language you feel most comfortable. We ask that bilingual folks don't switch from one to another language in the middle of a sentence due to the limitations of the technology we're working with. In a moment, the host will turn on the feature, and at the bottom right corner of your screen, you'll be able to select the language you want to hear the meeting in, English or Spanish. This will allow you to hear when speakers of both languages talk, but in your language of preference. If you're on a phone or tablet, you need to find the three-dot menu and select language interpretation. If you have any trouble with interpretation features, send a message to the host through the chat so the issue can be resolved. Thank you.
Dave, you're muted.
Well, that was good. Okay, again, welcome. This is our second community conversation program. May is dedicated to police and community relations. We'll be holding a series of discussions on various topics in English and Spanish. The discussions will take place every Thursday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And if there is still active participation, will be extended to no later than 8 p.m. Participants will be able to ask questions or provide comments. If you wish to ask a question and you have joined us via the web, please use the raise your hand icon. Once called upon, you will have 2 minutes. If you wish to ask a question but have joined the meeting by calling in, you will need to press *9 in your phone keyboard to raise your hand. Your name will be called by using the last 4 digits of your phone number. You will need to dial *6 to unmute yourself, and you will have 2 minutes. Please know that the city reserves the right to disconnect your participation if the comments become offensive or foul language is used. I want to thank everyone for attending tonight's session. Tonight's discussion will cover accountability, the complaint process. I would like to introduce Captain Ian Laughlin and our current chief, Captain Garo Karigian. Gentlemen, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Ian is having difficulty hearing, so I'm going to have Erica send him another link. He can talk, but he can't hear anything that's being said. So if Erica, you could send him another link, and then we could have him relog on. I think that that could solve our problems here.
Okay.
Ian, can you hear us? Ian, can you hear us? We're going to try something else here to see if he can connect and actually participate in this a little better.
I just resent the link. If that doesn't work, maybe we can have him dial in and I can have him register as a participant and then promote him as a panelist with his phone. That can be the alternative.
I think he had a slideshow he wanted to share with us as well, but I'll make that. Did he send you the slideshow?
If he emails me the slideshow and then tells me next slide, I can drive that for him. So
Okay.
just have him email it over.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience with our technical difficulties.
Yeah, hold on one second. I'm trying to log in. I'm going to call in. I'll be there.
Was that from your phone or is that his actual audio?
So that's his. I was talking to him on the phone, and he was responding to me on the phone. So
Okay.
we'll get this worked out.
I'm gonna have him just dial in if that's okay, Captain. Unless you need a couple of extra minutes.
If you give us
Okay.
one more minute.
Okay.
You entered 549046. This meeting ID does not exist. Please re-enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Can you hear me now, Gara?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Thank you. We can hear you.
Can you hear me now, Garo?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I apologize for the technical difficulties. I'm going to share a screen. I'm Captain Ian Laughlin, and I'm not sure, I couldn't hear what was said, but I'm the manager of our internal affairs, and I'm pleased to assist Captain Couragean with the overview of the complaint process. So I'm going to share a PowerPoint presentation with everyone. Can everyone see that?
Yes,
Okay.
we can see it.
All righty. Again, I'm Captain Laughlin. I apologize for the technical difficulties. And I'm going to give you kind of an overview of our complaint process, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has. So the sheriff's mandated to have a complaint process to investigate complaints by members of the public. And this is a legislative mandate under 832.5 of the Penal Code. And it applies to every agency in the state, be it a police agency or sheriff's department that employs peace officers. And these complaint investigations can be reviewed by local grand juries, members of the district attorney's office, and the state's attorney general's office. Some agencies are subject to oversight boards and commissions, and now most all agencies have their policies and procedures online, so the community can investigate and kind of better become better informed on what we do and why we do certain things. So complaint investigations are considered part of the personnel file. So they're confidential. So if we open a administrative investigation behind a complaint, we're going to hold that investigation for 6 years because it's part of the personnel file. And generally, they're not going to be disclosed unless there's a pitches motion in court where a judge deems that the information can be disclosed. Any sustained allegations or sustained complaint cases can trigger what we consider a Brady issue with the district attorney's office. And that essentially means that if there's a allegation that's sustained that affects the deputy's ability or employee's ability to testify as a credible witness, they would have to disclose that information to the prosecution and the defense. And one of the most significant legislative changes recently, kind of making law enforcement agencies more accountable and our records being more transparent, with Senate Bill 1421, which essentially now makes officer-involved shooting investigations, any type of discharge of a weapon event at a citizen, or use of forces where there's great bodily injury, such as a broken bone, or any serious or significant injuries, and sustained misconduct cases involving theft, false report, perjury, destruction of evidence, or sexual assault. Those are now going to be public records, and it's going to be all of the records. So anything that we compile and present to the district attorney's office involving like an officer-involved shooting, reports, video, and for sustained misconduct or administrative internal affairs cases, it's going to be all of the personnel and internal affairs documents that were used to sustain the allegation. So some of the common types of complaints we receive, this is not all inclusive, but it's just a general overview of some of the things we're seeing. There's a lot of conduct unbecoming, or just general conduct that might reflect poorly on the department or the profession. Discourteous treatment, being rude, uncaring, maybe doing something in a mean-spirited manner, neglect of duty, unlawful arrest or unfair ticket, inaccurate or false report, unlawful detention, unlawful search and seizure harassment, unnecessary or excessive force cases, and then bias-based policing. So if there's an on-duty criminal conduct allegation, it's going to be investigated by our Major Crimes Bureau before we do any type of administrative investigation. So kind of our structure and jurisdiction is, we're based in Ventura. I report, or our unit reports to the support services commander. There's a captain, me, a program assistant, and then 4 sergeants that complete the investigations. And we have essentially our jurisdictions, all of the sheriff's office employees. So that's going to be on or off duty misconduct. For all employees working in the contract cities such as Fillmore, Ojai, Camarillo, Moore Park, Thousand Oaks, and all the unincorporated areas, that includes the jails, the Main and Todd Road jails, our Ventura and Superior courts, and all the specialized units, crime lab, and other specialty assignments that we have on the department. So here's an example of some of the cases that have been opened over the years. So you can see departmentally for the sheriff's office, there's obviously many more cases. You can see 2018 through 2020, it's running in about the mid-90s. Year to date, departmentally, we have about 32. But clearly Fillmore has fewer complaints. You know, it's under, there's under 10, clearly 2020, we had 3, and then there's been none year to date.
Ian, I hate to interrupt you, but we're getting feedback on our end. Are you on both the phone and the computer audio? Because it's providing feedback to us.
Let me, is that better?
Not much better. We can't hear you now. We can't hear you, Ian. You're muted.
Are you there?
Yes. We'll
okay, yeah, I'll move my phone away. Can you hear it now?
Go ahead.
Not too far away?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. So there's generally 2 tracks that we get complaints that come in. We'll have department initiated complaints where the supervisor observes a policy violation or misconduct. They're told of a policy violation by an employee. Many of our policies direct employees to report misconduct. There'll be off-duty conduct such as a DUI arrest or the off-duty conducts. They need a nexus to the department, you know, maybe getting in an argument off-duty in your uniform or showing your identification unnecessarily if you got stopped for a traffic ticket. I mean, any type of misdemeanor arrests, generally they resolve the criminal matter before we do our internal affairs investigation. But the felony crimes generally are going to be investigated by major crimes, and the employee will be placed on administrative leave, and then we'll complete the administrative investigation. As far as the community, we generally get the complaints coming in through complaint forms, but we'll accept phone calls, emails, letters, social media posts, and then even online community forums. So the government code sections 3300 through 3312 kind of give us our ground rules for completing administrative investigations, and it kind of sets the rules for interrogations, interviews, and some of the things that have to be provided to the employee. And the sheriff's office employs these protections to all members of the department, regardless of rank, sworn and non-sworn, full-time and part-time employees. And it's essentially called the Peace Officer Bill of Rights. And it's essentially, the easiest way to remember it is if a supervisor is going to question an employee about conduct that could result in a punitive action, which means discipline of a written reprimand or greater, they have to comply with Peace Officer Bill of Rights. Agencies can be fined for violating the Peace Officer Bill of Rights. And the legislator enacted it essentially to protect employees from unfair questioning without any type of representation. And the basics of it are, you have to inform the employee of the allegation. You don't have to tell a deputy that you want to speak with them about a complaint because they were rude or discourteous. They have to have the ability to review evidence and prepare a defense. They have to occur at a reasonable hour. They're not threatening or offensive. And you have to ask pretty reasonable and related questions. And there can be no more than 2 interrogators, which means no more than 2 supervisors present. So some complaints that come in might be of a lesser seriousness, and those could be handled by a patrol sergeant or a custody sergeant, and those are less formal. The interviews aren't recorded, they're more conversational. Employees are still ordered to be truthful, but they're more fact-finding, and there's not any rights to any representation because the penalty is only in a more informal write-up. Whereas any internal affairs or more serious investigations, all the interviews are recorded. They're much more formal in that the named employees will have an attorney present during the interview. They're provided reports and memos, body-worn camera to prepare a defense. It's much more serious in that they're advised their rights, and there's a secondary admonishment where they're ordered to be truthful. And the penalties could be depending on how the investigation is determined. If it's sustained, it could be as less as a minor or an informal write-up to termination. So here's a general workflow. It's not all inclusive, but it's just kind of some ideas on what we do behind the scenes. So we'll receive a complaint from the department initiated or a community initiated. And I'll generally reach out to the captain. So if we got a complaint in Fillmore, I'd reach out to Captain Couragean, let him know that we received it, or he would, on the flip side, let me know that he received it, and we would talk about it, and then it would be assigned to a sergeant, and either the sergeant or I would reach out to the community member, notify him that we received the complaint, and then try to clarify, make sure that we're understanding their concern or their issue, so we investigate it properly. And then we go into basic investigation, where we're going to gather video evidence, witness statements, any GPS data if there are units involved, official reports, anything that would help support or help us investigate it properly. We'll do interviews of witnesses, interview of the named employee, and then the sergeant will complete a review and write in opinions and conclusions. That will be forwarded to me, and I'll review that. I'll also write a cover memo explaining the facts and kind of the findings to my commander, who will review it. And if it's sustained, the commander will determine the discipline. And then a named employee can appeal discipline through a Skelly hearing, which is essentially a meeting with one of the assistant sheriffs if they feel the discipline is too excessive. And if they're not pleased with that, they have due process rights where they can go to civil service and arbitration. And then the community members mailed a letter with the disposition of the case. And this sometimes can be frustrating for the community members because we're not allowed, because they're protected personnel files, to discuss all of the aspects of the investigation, what we did, who we interviewed, what evidence we had to support what occurred or what didn't occur. And they'll get a letter or we'll speak about the dispositions, and there's only 5 findings we can come to. It's unfounded, where the allegation wasn't supported by the evidence. Exonerated, meaning that the incident occurred, but the employee acted lawfully and properly. Not sustained, meaning that the investigation didn't disclose enough information to prove or disprove the allegation. And sustained, where the allegation was supported by the evidence. And that's the only disposition where discipline can be imposed. And then we have an abated section that it really doesn't apply very often. It's usually if a complaint comes in, it lacks merit, meaning that it wasn't a complaint, it was more of a question or a suggestion, or the community member might withdraw the complaint, or they don't want to cooperate, or there's just not enough evidence or any other way to investigate the misconduct allegation. So I talked about discipline. If an allegation is sustained, they could get a divisional personnel report if it turns out to be less serious, and that's more of an informal write-up. It stays at the station level. It really has not a lot of impact on any assignments or anything like that, but it allows the department to be aware that something occurred. So if another event occurs, supervisors and managers are aware. The next step would be obviously a written reprimand, and that's more serious. It's placed in an employee's personnel file for 2 years, and it could affect promotions or getting selected for specialized assignments. And there's suspensions without pay, and those can range from 1 to 30 days, demotion and termination. And so the discipline is going to be based on the seriousness of the misconduct. So as I mentioned earlier, 1421, those offenses are very serious. And if you had a sustained 1421 case, your discipline could very quickly rise to the level of demotion or termination, depending on the facts and the seriousness of the case. But generally, we have progressive discipline. It's going to be based on past misconduct. So for example, if a deputy had a DPR 3 years ago for being rude, and then a year later, they worked at another station and they had another sustained allegation for being rude, more likely than not, they're going to get a written reprimand or a suspension. So it just kind of progresses up, and it can end in termination if the employee keeps behaving and getting sustained allegations that are similar in nature. I mean, as an agency, we apply the discipline fairly across the board. So similar misconduct in Thousand Oaks would be result in the same discipline as misconduct in Fillmore or Ojai. So we try to keep it fair across the board. Here's an example of some of the discipline and sustained cases over the past few years. So for example, 2018, there was 26 different types of discipline, ranging from DPRs to terminations. Similar in 18, but not as many cases that were sustained with discipline. And you can see there's kind of a distinction between department initiated and community initiated, and it varies by year. It really depends on the volume of complaints that we receive and that are sustained. And so some of the ideas or suggestions I often give out are to kind of resolve concerns is that, I recommend that people, if they have an issue with an employee about a procedure or policy, ask the employee, if it's on a traffic stop or at a front counter, ask the employee to explain what or why something's occurring. Sometimes we, as the sheriff's office, don't do a good job explaining the why of what we do. And so it's not inappropriate to ask. And if they're not satisfied there, they can always ask to speak with the supervisor or a sergeant. And during non-business hours, we have the dispatch center so they can contact the watch commander and explain any concerns. And the numbers posted up here. If practical, and I know in Fillmore it's a smaller town, so it's not impractical to go to the station during business hours, maybe explain your concern. You can turn in a complaint form if you feel your complaint's not being resolved. And the website, it's pretty easy to find at venturasheriffs.org. If you Google, it's really easy to get. And then lastly, we always accept phone complaints, so they can contact our sheriff's office at 654-2250. And I'm not sure if you have anything else, Cara?
No, I think that's a good overview. And I think at this point, Dave, if there's members of the participating in this conversation that have questions, Captain Laughlin would be able to assist.
Okay, let me just remind everybody, again, if you have any questions or if you'd like to make a comment and you have joined us via the web, please use the raise your hand icon. Once called upon, you will have 2 minutes. If you wish to ask a question but have joined the meeting by calling in, you will need to press *9 in your phone keyboard to raise your hand. Your name will be called by using the last 4 digits of your phone number. You'll need to dial *6 to unmute yourself, and you will have 2 minutes. And as a reminder, please know the city reserves the right to disconnect your participation if the comments become offensive or foul language is used. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments, Erica?
Yes, I'm just,
Okay.
1 second. Okay, the first question is coming from Gil. Gil, you have been unmuted. You have 2 minutes starting now. Gil?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, well, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys. Thanks for taking the time to meet with the community. It means a lot. This is gonna help raise the amount of confidence that we have in you guys in the system. Second, I work in the private sector. I'm not sure if any of you guys ever work for the private sector, but I'm a supervisor where I work, and I'm accountable for my actions, personally accountable. If I make a mistake, if I'm acting under negligence, I'm personally accountable. Why isn't police officers accountable like that? If there's a lawsuit against the police department, we, the taxpayers who pay your salary, have to pay for the lawsuit, for the settlement, right? But not the officer. If I get a lawsuit against my company and I was liable, then I had to pay for it. Okay, so you guys, police officers, should be measured at the same level and standards as any other citizen that pays your salary. So again, the question, why aren't police officers accountable at the same level and ethics as the person who pays your salary? Thank you.
Well, Gil, there's legislation right now that's actually addressing that. What you're referring to is a term called qualified immunity. And it's not just police officers, it's government employees. There are a number of reasons why they put qualified immunity into place, and those are issues that legislators are looking at to determine the necessity or whether or not something like that is going to be changed in the future. But that's the origin of it, and that would be the answer to that question. Unless you have something to add to that, Ian.
Well, the only thing I would add is that is sometimes we'll have departmentally we'll become aware of some type of misconduct or some type of act, and we do proactively open administrative investigations, but it doesn't get back to the being held like personally liable financially for errors, but they could receive discipline for it, but they may not necessarily pay out of pocket for damages that they've done. That's about all I have.
Thank you. The next participant is Marcy Ramos Cruz.
Hi, thank you for being here. I just had one question, but before I ask my question, I live here in Fillmore, and I just want to let the captain know how admirable and how nice all of the deputies are. I think I've come across several, and they're very friendly, very nice, very professional. I've worked with some of them in my line of work. I'm a social worker, and I'm also the Area Housing Authority Commissioner here in Ventura County. So everybody's been very, very professional and very transparent. I wanted to know if I could get a copy of the PowerPoint. I don't know if that is available for us.
I'll talk with Captain Couragean, and I'll forward to him and see if he's. There's nothing top secret in it. I don't think it's necessarily something I'm not willing to share. So I'll coordinate that with Captain Couragean.
Absolutely. I think the city has email addresses. Eric, if I'm speaking out of school, please correct me. And we could make this available. We did with the talking points last week, and certainly with this as well. It's a great resource to turn to. In addition to just, he highlighted this in a thumbnail sketch. There's more information available on the Sheriff's Office website that goes beyond the complaint process, but just in terms of public resources. That's, you know, it's so important to allow people to have that level of transparency that we really strive for. So, but I don't think that that'll be difficult. Captain will email it to me, and I can make it available to the city to send out to those who would like it, for sure.
I don't see any other questions on the queue. Oh, there we go. Okay. Next participant is Joey.
Can you hear me?
Yes, your 2 minutes are starting now, okay?
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a question about the slide where you had the sheriffs versus the and the Fillmore sheriffs broken out. Captain Laughlin?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I'm curious, like living in Fillmore, I see some of the vehicles will say Fillmore Police, City of Fillmore Police, and some will say Ventura County Sheriffs. So are you counting anything that happens in Fillmore that's done by Ventura County Sheriff on the sheriff side or on the Fillmore side? And that's one question. And that's kind of nuts and bolts. And my second question, I think, is a little more substantive maybe. And I'm just curious if you, Captain Laughlin and Garrow, Chief Garrow, if you think that do you think this is adequate, this process for complaints? Do you think this is a good system? Maybe it's been around since before you were in these roles. Do you find it satisfactory to build trust with the community and make a better department? So 2 questions there.
So I'll address the first part. As far as statistics, we try to be as accurate as we can. So that's Fillmore City specific. It's pretty easy when we speak with the community member if it's department initiated, to determine if it's an event that occurred in Piru, that would be in the unincorporated area. We wouldn't necessarily want to keep that in the Fillmore statistics. So the statistics are for Fillmore City specific. And then as far as oh, go ahead.
No, that's you.
Oh. And as far as the complaint process, we're kind of limited a little bit in the legislative requirements of the government code and a lot of the Peace Officer Bill of Rights, as far as the abilities to more quickly question employees, because the more serious the allegation, obviously they have rights to prepare a defense and have legal representation. So it sometimes can be slow, but overall, I think our system's pretty thorough and robust, and we're definitely putting a lot of resources in. And we have a captain, a commander that oversees us, a civilian employee to complete statistics and do all the coordinating of that. And then we have 4 sergeants working in here. So. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Gar.
I think a couple of the things that Captain Laughlin was going over, when someone is accused of wrongdoing, a violation that's even a criminal violation, they're read their Miranda rights just like a suspect would be who is accused of wrongdoing, like a criminal case. In addition to that, there's another case he cited where it's a Liebarger case, which is the name of the case, similar to Miranda, where we can compel the employee to talk, even if they don't want to speak. So that's something that is different for members of our or of law enforcement or people that are covered under the POBAR rights, if you will. That's different than a member of the public. If you're being accused of a crime and going to be interviewed, and they read your Miranda rights, and you're like, I don't want to talk, they can't order you to speak. They can order us to speak, and I can order. When I used to work in internal affairs as a sergeant, and routinely we would do that. So that's also an added nuance in terms of the way that we can obtain information and get to the truth of the matter.
Thank you. The next participant is Alberto Peñuelas.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Your 2 minutes are starting now, sir.
So I just kind of want to piggyback a little bit on one of the last comments said about police immunity and how us, the taxpayer, being held responsible for it. And I know how you guys are talking about legislation being passed and stuff like that, but we don't have to wait for that. This is more for the city council and people watching. The city of New York, the city council unanimously passed ending police immunity. So we're able to do that ourselves if the city council and the city constituents support it, obviously. And I think this would never affect any good cops negatively. I think the good cops would welcome it, and anybody who opposes it should, maybe reconsider what they do. That being said, I think we could all work together a better way to hold people accountable for even treating people in a negative light. Because a lot of times our complaints are always become unfounded. And that's when ending police immunity would help us pursue other avenues, because when the police investigate themselves, it's incredibly difficult to find an honest answer. So, and that's just kind of a little bit just piggybacking on what one of the other answers was, one of the other guys asking. But we could definitely, as a city council, could take this up, debate it, go back and forth, and, as a community, come to an answer to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving to the following comment or question. Janice, you have been unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Your 2 minutes start now, okay?
Hello. I was wondering what the procedures are if there is a problem with the Explorer Scouts, and how is that different, and who do you talk to if there's a problem? Thank you.
The explorers are volunteers. They're volunteers. It's similar to like a Boy Scout, Girl Scout program between the ages of 14 and 21 that work at various substations. We had a robust Explorer program prior to the COVID pandemic. So if there's an issue with that, it would be the sergeant that's in charge of that unit. Or if you have a complaint, if you come to the station, any one of my patrol sergeants would be able to initiate looking into that complaint.
Thank you. Okay. Next participant is Luana Barajas. You have been unmuted.
Hello. Okay, just wait. I'm sorry. I have to apologize. My little ones are meeting me right when I had to talk. So my I guess kind of more of a comment. I'm a middle school teacher here in Fillmore. I've taught 6th and 7th and 8th at our middle school. And my biggest concern is that I have middle school students, mostly my male students, who come and say that they have been approached by police officers in a disrespectful way, that they are scared of police officers, that they feel like they get profiled by the officers. And these are 11, 12, and 13-year-old children. And they are not going to make a report. They are not going to ask for a badge number, or, you know, and they also have told me, and I reacted, you know, and I said mean things to the cop, and because they're kids and they don't know how to behave in that situation. So my big concern with this complaint process is that it really does not take our youth that are feeling not supported in our community by our police officers. It doesn't take them into account. And it is creating a big divide between them and the police officers. And then this causes even more tension and more problems. So I definitely want to bring forward for there to be things put into place to be able to fix this huge, and I've taught for 12 years. I've taught 6 in town, and this is something that I hear every single year. Like, this is not an uncommon thing to hear from our male youth in town. Thank you.
Juana,
Yes.
the 2 minutes are up. Juana?
Could you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now, but your 2 minutes, I just wanted to let you know that the 2 minutes are up.
Oh, were you able to hear me speaking earlier?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Evaristo Barajas, you have been unmuted. Evaristo? Evaristo?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. I'm starting your 2 minute timer right now, okay?
Okay, thank you very much for taking my question. I just give you a little history of myself. I am a former mayor of the city of Fillmore and also on the city council back in the 90s, early 2000s. And my concern at this point is that, first of all, the sheriff's department, I think, is a great asset to our community. There's no doubt about that. When we decided to go a sheriff, I think we made the right choice. But one thing that I think that we can change is more transparency. I heard one of the individuals talk about that things sometimes, the complaints sometimes don't go anywhere. Well, and the public really has no idea of where it started and where it ended. Wouldn't it be a good idea to have a panel, maybe a few members out of the community that can hear certain complaints that come through and evaluate if you're going to proceed with them or not? You know, investigating everything within the police, within the sheriff's department, doesn't give assurance to the public. It definitely doesn't give assurance to me. Okay. So I would just say, is there any possibility of coming up with an idea with a panel or a committee or something that things are handled more openly? And that's my question.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Barajas, a lot of the, first of all, that's an insightful question, and I get the uncertainty when people don't know what the process is, or if the outcome isn't what they feel is the just outcome. My answer to that is our efforts to create more transparency through outreach efforts with the community, whether it's conversations like this that started in town that I'm familiar with last year, or more substantive things that are being done with the legislator, where processes are being changed, where there's different rules of how investigations are done, how public disclosure occurs. Assembly Bill 1421 was not, there were rules against releasing the information prior to the passage of that bill. So things are changing. It may, and it's a big ship, so the change may not be coming fast enough in some cases, but getting the public's trust and support is paramount to us. We have a few deputies, a few police officers that are working in this city, a city of 15, 16,000 people. We need the public support. We have tremendous amount of public support, but we need everyone to trust us, to believe in what we're doing, and it's a greater good. So these processes are things that are evolving. They evolve as society's need for those things change. But some of it is regulated by legislation. I'm sorry. Some of it is regulated by legislation, and like I said, those are things that are being changed, even through each legislative session that they're going through.
Janice Butler, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. I have a follow-up on what I was asking about before. I've spoken to one sergeant already, and I don't feel that my complaint was really addressed. So I'm trying to effectively use the system until I feel more satisfied that what I had to say was really registering. So I'd like to know which sergeant is in charge of the police explorers. And I'm also very interested in knowing what exactly are they allowed to do and not do, especially given their age. So I have concerns and I don't feel they've been addressed yet. And it does make me feel somewhat distrustful that they will be. So if you can give advice about how to better work through the system, I would very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. So the explorers haven't been active with any of our stations since the pandemic began. They are boys and similar to Boys and Girl Scout type of organization. They are never out without an advisor, at least one, sometimes more. They can be used for events. We utilize them at events like the toy giveaway, where they assist us with directing traffic, again, under the supervision of an explorer advisor. They also work in places like if there's a street closure for the trunk or treat, they participate in those things as well. So our explorers are are utilized in different ways. They also get an opportunity to learn how to talk on a police radio. They go to competitions both within the county and outside the county. It's a great opportunity for residents in our community, their children, to really explore whether or not they want to, if they want to learn more about law enforcement, if they want to learn more about their local police department, that's an opportunity for them to do it. So that's the way that they're utilized. Whenever they are deployed, there is a sworn or non-sworn advisor with them. In some cases, the advisors are not sworn law enforcement. They could be a professional staff member. They could be a volunteer, but there's always somebody there to supervise them.
Thank you. Joey, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just following up. So I was listening to one of the earlier participants voice concerns about her students and like processes for youth to be able to kind of talk about feeling intimidated by sheriffs or police or whomever. And I thought that was, she might have been hard to hear, but I think that was like a genuine concern. And no one really replied to that concern. Like, do you have anything to say about that or something to, I mean, it's a conversation. I know maybe there wasn't a question there, but I think you can still respond to it. That's all.
Absolutely. So that's something that we strive to do, is to build partnerships within the community. And if people, whoever it is within the community, feels like we're not building those partnerships, it's something that concerns me as the captain out here. And what we do to address that, since these are people that are saying things to their teacher that necessarily don't come to us within the organization, is we have a training regimen, and that regimen includes interaction with people. How do we talk to people, and how do we in the old days we would call it a verbal judo, like using your words in a way to try to try to accomplish a certain goal without offending the people that you're interacting with, right? So those are, now there's different incarnations of that, and so that's something that is important to not only me at the station, but across the board at all our stations that we service.
I do see that we do have 2 other speakers. Janice?
Yeah, it's another follow-up. I still am not sure who to speak to about my concern. Who should I start with? It was something that happened last November. I was told that it was explorers, and you say that they weren't involved, so I don't even know where to start.
Janice, I think if it's what I'm thinking about that occurred in November, I think you talked to one of our sergeants. I'd be happy to speak with you if you, I'm sorry, the light just went off in my office. I hope you can still see me. I'd be happy to speak with you. If you would like to come to the station, I'd be happy to sit down and talk with you to resolve this.
Gil, you've been unmuted.
All right, well, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, well, again, I really like that you guys are doing this. I really appreciate it. And now a couple of follow-ups. And I really like what Mr. Baraja said about transparency. And I was surprised that you guys are saying that you keep the records for 6 years. I was under the impression that the Ventura County Sheriff's Department was under a lawsuit because they prevented records from being released. I'm not sure if it was the ACLU or any other organization that tried to get records, and the Ventura County Sheriff's Department either prevented those records from being released, or they charged like outrageous amount of money to release those records. So that's a sign of untransparency, if that's the word for that. And second, yes, I've been living here in Fillmore for over 30 years, and yeah, I see a lot of kids being stopped by the police officers, and every now and then I kind of wonder, oh, why are they stopping them? Are they're minors? Isn't there supposed to be a parent or somebody there? Why are you stopping a minor? What's the deal? And a third, when it comes to accountability, when a complaint is made, well, first of all, there's either hundreds of thousands of complaints every year here in this great United States. Out of those hundreds or thousands, I don't know the exact number, only a few of them get investigated. And out of those cases that are investigated, only a handful result on some kind of charge being pressed against the police officers. I don't want to use that word, but isn't there some kind of blue wall of silence? I know I can go and place a complaint, but what happens after? Okay, well, thank you, and I hope you guys can answer my questions.
Ian, do you want to start with the third one on that one, and then I'll answer the other ones?
So as far as the records release and retention, so we follow, and you can find the policy online, we follow a records retention policy. So for internal affairs or citizen complaints, for years we've been retaining those for 6 years, and then we have we'll purge them unless there's active litigation. As far as the other lawsuit, that's a separate matter regarding a wide variety of public records requests. But I would recommend if you go online, if you're concerned about records retention, we have policies, and it'll kind of define what records we keep and for how long.
Yeah, and Gil, if I could just add to that. So there was a law that was passed regarding the release of police records, and there were a number of law enforcement agencies that were confused as to how that law was to be applied. And that might be what you're referring to. The confusion is the release of records past the date the law was enacted, or does it go into effect before that law was enacted? And I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that could be the lawsuit that you may have been referring to. I believe that was both the county of Ventura and I think the Deputy Sheriff's Association were the people that entered into that, trying to prevent the release of information before a certain date, before the date of the passage. Regarding the stopping of kids, there could be a number of reasons why they're stopping and talking to kids. They could be accused of something that someone may have called and said something occurred and these are the suspects. I don't know. It could be a situation where they are stopping them to talk to them for no reason at all. I don't know exactly why they're talking to him, because the situations vary from contact to contact. So it's difficult to answer why they would contact and talk to someone without having the context for that stop. They could be on some sort of supervised release. that allows for stop and talk more frequently. So without having more information, it's difficult to answer that.
Thank you. Albert Benuelas, you're being unmuted.
Hi, I have a, one of the participants mentioned a third-party panel of, out, excuse me, outside of the police department to handle complaints. And I know Garo says, wait on legislation, and that's usually the answer that we get is, there's legislation coming and stuff like that. But again, I say we don't have to wait on that. We have a blueprint that other cities have put out. LA County has a third-party panel, even a probation panel. I was there when we did it. I spoke at the city council for it, and we got it. So, this goes back down to our city leaders. We don't have to wait for the police department or the sheriff's department or legislation to get passed. The city council should take this up, and then we could have a debate, and then we could take it forward. That's one. And then the two, as I spoke with Garo, it's this stuff about the children, you just got you have a sixth grade teacher saying year after year she gets these complaints. And again, the importance of the officer speaking Spanish, because a lot of these kids' parents don't even know their rights. They don't speak English. They don't know their rights. They're afraid to come forward. These kids are never going to file a complaint. These cops know this. They abuse the power in that way. I know you say well, we don't know why they pulled them over. We don't know this. I think we should have a policy that they are not allowed to pull over any minors for no reason at all. If there is no phone calls, they should not be allowed to be speaking to these minors. And if they do, for whatever reason, the very first contact should be the parent. Should be, hey, you need to call your parent now. That should be, our guidance. And again, we don't have to wait for legislation. The sheriff's department doesn't have to like our policy, but as a city, our city leaders should take up this. And with city council, we have the blueprint of other cities throughout the country that already have this, in place. So we could use that. We could mimic it. We could alter it, to benefit or to fit our city and our needs. That'll benefit everybody. And that way we don't have any more phone calls saying, hey, cops are doing this, cops are doing that. I think at the end of the day, it'll really benefit all of us on both sides. But we should take initiative and stop waiting on legislation. Our city council should definitely take up these concerns. You have a sixth grade teacher that sees kids all day, and she's saying year after year, children are being profiled and pulled over, and they're afraid to come forward. I mean, wherever there's smoke, there's fire. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. It was good speaking with you earlier today, Chief. Thank you.
Okay. I do see a person requesting to speak, phone number ending in 5500. You will have to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I'm listening to the commentary going on. There's some really good comments and suggestions about transparency. But I'm also listening to some of the parents, and I'm assuming they're parents talking about the fear that the police are bringing forth with the children. And as an older adult, I'm a grandparent. A lot of times, kids are getting in trouble more and more. There's a lot of no oversight by the parents. They're not available. And the police become the parent. And I have to speak in support that I hear a lot of victimizing, that these kids are innocent. And yeah, it would be nice to be able to talk to the parents, but a lot of times they're not available. And I really think that you have to examine what's going on in the family. There's a lot of broken families. There are a lot of other issues, and it shouldn't fall flat on the police to be the. I've had problems with my kids. I've had the police come to my home, and when it was all said and done, my child deserved it, and it was things that were out of hand. I just think the parents have to become more available and not always seek out the officer as the problem. And I guess this isn't really a question, it's a commentary. And that's all I have to say. I do support our police, and I don't see myself as a victim. And I think the police are doing the best that they can. And if you want them to be held personally responsible, financially responsible, you're not going to have the protection. I wouldn't want to be a police officer if somebody was going to hold me up in court. And I mean, it would drag out in court for who knows how long on little minute problems that could have been taken care of at home. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you. There's no more people in the queue at this point in time, so we will go ahead and end tonight's community conversation. I do want to say thank you to Captain Ian Laughlin and to our Chief Captain Garl Karigian. I also like to thank the individuals who asked questions and those of you who are participating in watching this. There are some very interesting and suggestions being made that we can take a look at for the moving forward. As a reminder, registration is currently open for our next community discussion, which is Thursday, May 20th at 6:30 p.m. The topic will be Racial and Identity Profiling Act with Captain Eric Tennyson. He's a former chief out here in Fillmore. So please check our website and social media to obtain the link to register. If you have any questions regarding upcoming registration, please contact Erica Herrera at 805-946-1712. And again, thank you everybody for participating. And thank you both gentlemen for your presentation tonight and answering the questions. This has been very productive, our first two, and looking forward to the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.